What I know, deep in my heart, is about half of the population is interested in football. That's for sure. So I can see that if you talk about football, you get an interest of about 50% of the population, then you can go from this to the Holocaust.
Zur größten Sportveranstaltung in Theresienstadt, zum Fußballwettspiel. Um die Zuschauermenge fassen zu können, findet das Wettspiel immer auf dem Hof einer früheren Kaserne statt. Wegen des etwas beschränkten Spielraumes sind die beiden Mannschaften nur je 7 Mann stark. Trotzdem wird von Anfang bis zum Ende den begeistert mitgehenden Zuschauern ein hartes Spiel geliefert.
It is this football match, played by Jews in the courtyard of a ghetto during the Holocaust, which bridges between the present and the past. The skills displayed by the players and the flow of play are easy to follow today. However, the period in which the game took place is unimaginable. This was probably the only association football game filmed on the 1st of September, 1944. After 5 years of war, most football leagues in Europe were dormant, and a lot of the players were engaged in combat around the world. The Jewish players pictured here were actually fighting for their lives as they tried to survive the horror around them. The Third Reich's occupation of Europe continued to strangle the civilian populations as Hitler swung the final solution into full gear. In the East, the Nazis decimated Europe's Jewish population. In one tiny corner of Europe, 60 kilometers northwest of Prague, the crescendo of battle was momentarily eclipsed by the sound of classical music. The Jews imprisoned in a ghetto were given time by their Nazi captors to engage in cultural activities. The fortress town was set up by the Nazis to hold the Jews of Czechoslovakia and prominent Jewish elders from Germany. In the grimy, teeming, death-infested ghetto, they waited for trains to transport them to the east. Uncertain of their fate, the sick and elderly perished in the overcrowded attics. The stronger prisoners survived the long, enforced labor workdays with a promise of free time for cultural activities. The Nazis focused film cameras on that pan of life. They produced a propaganda film called Terezin, a Jewish settlement. This is Oded Breda's third visit to the city.
הכפר הזה פה בצד ימין נקרא מושוויץ. עליו הייתה מגיעה הרכבת פעם, שם הלכו ברגל, ושם. Now we see the walls of Terezin, typical walls around the city. Red brick wall. This is why the city was chosen to be the prison, because of those walls.
on the right, you will see a National Cemetery established after the war immediately. There are two parts, as Christian as
The graves in the
Jewish.
National Czech Cemetery outside the walls of Terezinstadt greet Holocaust survivor Sal Fisherman. The Danish Jew spent 2 years in the ghetto and was more than just an eyewitness to scenes taken from the Nazi propaganda film. Fisherman was an actor and lighting boy on the film's production crew, led by Kurt Guerin, an acclaimed pre-war figure in the German movie industry. The SS stalked the crew, checking everything they shot.
Wenn der Arbeitstag endet und der Feierabend beginnt,
Fisherman remembers that in that scene, the director was only allowed to talk to Jews.
These people who take the film was not Jews. And we had an S-man with us, and one of the filmmen has asked Gern, and the SS-man has said, "You darf nicht fragen ihm der Judenschwein. Du darf mir fragen." That have he said.
What does that mean?
You darf not him. You darf to me speak. You darf not to him speak. You not to this Judenschwein. Judenpig.
In October 1944, Kurt Guerin was sent to the Auschwitz extermination camp, where he and most of the Jewish prisoners who took part in the film were murdered in the gas chambers.
And altogether, how much time
Fisherman
it took
explains
you to
how they
shoot?
shot the football
I'll
scene.
show you, for example.
Yes, I know this.
You,
Yes, yeah, there's a camera here.
Yes.
And there was a camera over here.
yes, from this side.
Yes, on
okay.
this side.
Yes.
And there was a camera on this side also.
And
from both sides.
this is the camera that you were here, the camera
Yes,
that was shooting
exactly,
this.
exactly.
Okay. Do you know who is this guy?
I
The
don't
tall
know.
one?
No, I don't know.
My uncle.
In 1961, a relative gave this newspaper cutting to the Breda family. They recognized Pavel Breda. The picture of his uncle left a lasting impression on Odette. These are the Dresden barracks. Today they are off limits, dangerous, dilapidated buildings, abandoned after the exit of the Czech army, an uneasy resting place for ghosts of the past.
From the first day when I saw this piece of paper where my uncle was on it, sometimes in the 60s. Since then, this piece of paper almost haunted me. What happened over there? I guess not too many people can find their relatives live, moving pictures. They can find their relatives from the Holocaust, like the people that we saw in that propaganda movie. Okay, you see them really moving. It's not just a picture of a moment. I can see him throughout all the film, and here, standing here, I can look exactly at every piece of land here, and I know where he was. This is a rare opportunity. Not many people can do that.
The children who sat in the arcades wrote diaries.
They just had a feeling, like, by the way, like adults, that they need to document everything for the future because something very wrong is going on here and we need to document it.
In their newspapers, the children reported how the trains transporting Jews to the east weakened the teams. You have to have a special reason to brave this snowbound highway for 3 hours. It is a humbling experience to collect the testimony of a Holocaust survivor who arrived on the first train into Theresienstadt on the 24th of November, 1941. He was later deported to Auschwitz, and at the end of the war, he survived the death marches to return to Theresienstadt.
So you had no troubles to find my house?
Where is it today?
What? Welcome. From Opava.
Breda Opava. It's a good guess, and I tell you why.
There was a big department store.
You're right. I know about it, but I never saw it.
I remember. Well, so you are four people, yes?
But my family came from Burma.
I see.
So,
Yes,
my
you told me. Come in, please. We are coming.
88-year-old Milos Dobry is a giant of a man who played international rugby for Czechoslovakia. In 1942, he was the goalkeeper for the Butchers team. His housewarming welcome includes a stiff shot of brandy to put guests at ease.
50% alcohol.
It also helps him open the lock to the gate of that period.
Very little, very little. That's it.
לחיי הפוטבול, לחיי הספורט.
I was a boy of 18. They used me to send to Theresienstadt in the first transport. And short after, more and more transports were coming to Theresienstadt.
The Jews were processed and thrust into a lifestyle whose primary state was one of survival.
The Nazis, they gave the order to the scientists, find out a system of feeding which must be too much for living and too little for dying. And so they introduced a system of feeding which I found in all concentration camps I passed later on. Instead of a normal man who is not working too heavily, must get 2,400 kilocalories. It's, you know, yes. And they gave us only 900.
Theresienstadt was run by a Jewish self-administration, and the Germans allowed the prisoners to have activities after working hours. The Football League teams were based on the players' place of work. Dobry worked in the butchery, close to the food, and was given the task of forming a team.
I was a football player before, I knew, but it's a good idea. And so I found some people, not from the butcher, because you must know that to be a butcher, it was a privilege. Because the butchers, they could eat, and the other people had no opportunity. And we knew about people, professional people, like Aule Mahrer.
What Mahrer got in exchange of being part of the butcher teams, he got more food?
More food?
Yeah.
He was invited to take part to our group, and we have been cooking and having good soups, beef soups and so on. It was his salary.
The Football League was run by committee and had its own logo. The matches were professionally organized and officiated. According to attendance records, tens of thousands watched the games.
You see the name Reach here?
Kurt Reach and Egon Reach.
You see the name Reach?
Reach.
I see.
He gave me a goal from the distance of 15 meters.
Yeah.
I remember
You
him.
remember this goal, huh? You don't forget this kind of goal.
In the heart of the winter in 1942, when the ghetto was overflowing with people and the mortality rate was at its height, Milos Dobry played on a muddy field next to the newly constructed crematorium. Dobry sensed that winning the game was key to his survival.
Well, it was a game against the Nazis. And I was playing this bloody game against the Nazis. I had to accept the game played by the Nazis against me. Yes, I had to accept the still of the game. They wanted to kill me, and I was against, I didn't want.
Between 1941 and 1945, 157,193 prisoners passed through Terezinstadt. 35,409 died in the ghetto from hunger or diseases. 88,129 were deported to extermination camps. 4,136 survived. The tranquility and beauty of Prague behooves the spirit of a people who, in the last 70 years, survived Nazi devastation and communist oppression. Professor Toman Brod was 13 years old when he watched football games in Terezinstadt. Brod is an author and retired professor of history.
Football was a matter of a pleasure, because we were despaired from the conditions prevailing in the ghettos and concentration camps, and we need some pleasure in our desperate time, desperate life, and it was very important not to lose our self-confidence, human dignity. It is crazy, but it is reality. Many things were crazy. Nevertheless, they were a reality.
Today, we went to the stadium.
Sparta fans, yeah. And you are fans of Liverpool, or you are fans of Sparta?
Brod was obsessed with football. The Czech national team reached the World Cup final in 1934. Football was the hope for a better world. For the first time in 75 years, he makes an exception and joins us in the Sparta Prague Stadium to watch his team play Liverpool. He has not set foot in the ground, which is 10 minutes' drive from his home.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the UEFA Europa League match between AC Sparta Prague and Liverpool Fantasy, and especially warm welcome to our visitors from England.
I'm afraid.
You are? Look, everybody's standing, having good life.
They are the fans, the most hard place for the fans, for the wild fans.
Yeah.
My memories, my feelings go back to my childhood. If I see this place and these games and these players, that it is a satisfaction for me that I am able to see again after more than 70 years again the football here on this very known stadium.
On the walls outside the stadium, Jews are equated with Sparta's city rival, Slavia Prague.
Yugoslavia.
Yeah. What is that?
That's an expression of hatred. Expression of hatred from the hands of Sparta. They hate the Slavia. And that's nonsense. It is a criminal expression.
But why use it as Juden? Why Judaism?
Because this is a synonym for something evil.
These symbols of evil are a stain on the beauty of Prague and its rich Jewish heritage. But the graffiti on the walls of the football ground pales in comparison to the 77,297 Jewish names inscribed on the walls of the Pinkas synagogue. The section with the victims from the town of Brno bears witness to the fate of the Breda family. With no graves to mark their final resting place, this home of worship is a sanctuary for those who bid their families' souls rest in peace. The railway line that runs opposite the building is the signpost marking the Breda pre-war residence.
I don't have any attachment to this. I was born in Israel. All I'm trying to do from time to time is looking here and understand the roots and the origins of my father, my family. But at the end of the day, Europe threw them away. In this flat, okay, the 5 windows here, my father was born here, before World War II. And we had to visit. The Breda family, my grandmother, my grandfather, my father, and Pavel, they were here. They lived here quite happily, going to Boskovice for the summer camp, living their life. And then right after March 39, when Czechoslovakia was taken by the Germany, their life started to change. And since then, they didn't have even one day of rest. They were lucky to send one of the boys to Palestine.
Moshe Breda was one of the few Czech youth that received a German-issued visa and escaped to Palestine, where he later joined the British Army and fought the Nazis. After the war, he returned to Brno and realized that every one of his family had been murdered. He never spoke about his family's fate again.
I have no intention to ask for any revenge or ask for anything from those people here. They can live their life, we will live our life. The only thing that is left is the commemoration that we are doing for this family that started her journey here and ended it in Israel and in Auschwitz.
But in the neighborhood, where police frequently patrol, they left a small mark, golden bricks with his family's names.
Before the war, there were 14,000 Jews in Brno. Less than 1,000 came back from the war to here. What I can say that there is no Jewish community in Brno, there are Jews in Brno.
I was looking with my father out of the window to the street, and we seen black cars were black Mercedes with SS going down the street, stopping, 2 SS or 3 SS getting out of the car, going up, somebody taking and coming with a Jew or They find there and put him in the car and took him out.
Moshe Breda shares memories of Brno with his son. A family trip in 2005 was the first time they began to relate to the past. Today, he is able to recall those frightening times before they were expelled from their homes.
Why you didn't speak about the Holocaust at home, to us, to the family? Nothing, never say anything.
Well, I've seen it there, that they were gone. And you have to get going. I never stop, I never look back. But still I can't help it.
The fourth man out of the tunnel behind Pavel Breda had a problem. His hair kept falling into his eyes, so he put on a white bandana. That made him easy to identify.
And the people ask me, did you make goals? No, I was playing in the defense, and my function was to give the balls, and I gave the ball to Honza Burka. Honza Burka, if he got a ball, it was a goal, because he was playing so good, it was hard to believe. So we liked it. We liked this game, and we are living, and what I mean it, we were living in the time we played football. That was life.
The Nazis wanted to use the propaganda film to deceive the world. Urban uses the film to prove his experiences were not fragments of his imagination.
You know, if you are living for 3-4 years in a full... you are out of the whole life of the world. You have no newspaper, you have no radio, you have nothing. Nobody can understand your life. And now you come out of the camp, try to explain, and we didn't try to explain, but no, because nobody could understand us. But suddenly you see a picture that you were living in this time. I was living in the ghetto. I'm very lucky that this kind of films they found. I see myself playing football, running on the road. So everything is true. It wasn't a story that I'm telling to somebody. Paul
Breda.
Breda has referenced Peter Urban's autobiography as an authentic source, proving that his uncle played in the game.
This book, in Hebrew, you signed here. This is actually the evidence that Pavel Breda, my uncle, was playing with you.
However, the secrets behind the making of the Nazi propaganda film lie in Holland, and a visit to the basement of a Dutch historian. But the first order of business is a football game in Amsterdam between Holland and Turkey. It's a chance to witness other phenomena which revolve around the modern game of football.
The reason that we should learn about the Holocaust. It's important to people to understand what is going on in the 21st century and try to avoid a human behavior like this, because the Holocaust was a human behavior. It was extreme human behavior, but still it was human behavior.
And I think this is why our work is so important.
Turks who live in Europe use football as an outlet to express nationalist beliefs. Outside the stadium, they feel the comfort of being in the majority.
From what I saw in the game, I felt that Turkey is playing at home. Can you...
Yeah. I had the feeling at the moment I arrived at the stadium. But I know, and I knew that the public of Turkey is very fanatic.
Not intimidated by their behavior. We actually run directly into the Turkish fans, we talk to them. I didn't feel even for 1 second that I'm in a danger or something. And I think the reason is because they imitated what they're doing in Turkey, but they knew where they are.
I don't see myself as a Hollandish people. I'm a Turk, you know. I am 100% Turk, not Hollandish. I can have a passport Hollandish Republic, you know, but I am a Turk.
And the fiery atmosphere continued during the game, which was stopped in the 62nd minute by the referee after Turkish fans threw firecrackers onto the pitch.
They almost blow the game. They start to throw fireworks, which is against the referee rules, and the referee actually asks the players to go to the crowd and ask them to stop, because it's a friendly game after all. What is good about it, that everything is on the TV screen, everything is in the stadium. We don't take it really to the battlefield. And I have a feeling that maybe for many people, that's enough. The football field is good enough for their feelings.
Holland won the game 1-0, and the Turkish fans returned to the norms of daily life.
What we see now is other xenophobia issues like Islamophobia in Europe. We see it developing now. We see how the European, some of them, start to fear from the Islamic religion, culture in their countries. There were other places where football was played, in the ghetto. There were
Author
youth.
Simon Cooper has written several books about football's role in society.
I read the book.
He is very wary about using football to explain the world.
Do you think that the wars in Europe moved to the stadiums?
Nah. European football stadiums are incredibly peaceful places. I have 3 small children. I look forward to the day when I'll be taking them to a stadium. There's very few stadiums in Western Europe I wouldn't go to with my children.
We've been to the stadium in the game Turkey against Holland.
Yeah, but wars. I mean, in World War II, 50 million people were killed.
Yes.
Turkey, Holland, a few people threw fireworks.
That's right.
I mean, you can't use this analogy. It's just terrible. And we as Jews should know there's a very big difference.
So
between...
it's not war, it's a rival.
It's a carnival. It's a carnival.
Was Ajax a Jewish?
Cooper is also an authority on another social peculiarity. Ajax, the Dutch, the war. Translated into Hebrew.
Contrary to myth, Ajax was never a Jewish club. Ajax was the club of the Amsterdam middle classes, people who had good jobs. And a very small proportion of them were Jews. Because strangely in Amsterdam in 1940, Jews were mostly proletarians, quite poor people. So the Ajax stadium with its 15 or 20,000 spectators, a lot of those people would be Jews. Not a majority, but the Jews were there. And then, of course, after 1945, they weren't there anymore because no country in Western Europe lost a larger proportion of its Jews. 80% of Dutch Jews were killed. And so Ajax went from being a club with a large Jewish support to a club with a very small Jewish support. So you see the sort of tragedy of the Jews very well in the shape of Ajax, because it was the club of Amsterdam East where the Jews lived.
The fans of Ajax call themselves the Jews. In November 2010, their Jewish chairman, Uri Coronel, grappled with the dilemma of upholding his Jewish identity, but discouraging the supporters from expressing their affinity for Judaism.
One of the team that played in the ghetto, you know, there was football in Terezin.
Yeah, I know.
One of the field called Hollandia.
My parents-in-law were in Terezin.
Okay. One of the team was called Hollandia.
Yes, I didn't know that. I know what Theresienstadt is. I've been there, and I'm so much part of the Jewish history.
Do you see today some influence of racism or anti-Semitism which are aimed towards the club?
Not necessarily within the club, but definitely with the supporters of other clubs. Because of the fact that our supporters call themselves the Jews, the reaction in this country, which is not as Jewish friendly as many people think, and with other clubs, is that if we start "we are the Jews," they start to call all kind of nasty things. I'm convinced that our supporters don't mean anything by calling themselves Jews. But the reaction which we have to live with in stadiums, especially outside Amsterdam, is one of the reasons why personally I hesitated very much of becoming chairman of this club. Although I have been involved with Ajax for many, many years. What I don't like about myself is that I started to get used to it. If you would have told me 40 years ago, when I was already involved in Ajax and supported Ajax as a young man, I would never have believed that these kind of things would happen here. Now you're getting used to things.
Why the flag of Israel?
The flag?
Yes.
Yeah, that is typical Ajax, eh? Jewish.
Typical?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Can I buy the Israeli flag?
Yeah.
And it's allowed?
Which one? The middle one?
I would like to know. No, this is not the Israeli flag.
Oh, that one.
But I heard that this is not allowed anymore in the stadium.
Yeah,
it's not allowed. No problem?
There was a word beginning with N that some football fans used to shout at players like me. They don't do it anymore.
There was a word beginning with P that some football fans used to shout at players like me, but they don't do that anymore either.
But for some reason, England, Tottenham Hotspurs are known as the Jewish team. The opposing fans call them the Yiddos, which is a derogatory term.
What they're chanting is a racist word for Jews, the Y word.
The Y word is just as bad and just as offensive as the N word and the P word.
But some of you might think
it is the professional football players who lead the counter-campaign.
It's just a bit of a laugh.
Is it? Well, what about these chants?
Back in the 1930s and 40s, Jewish people all over Europe were being rounded up and killed. People called them Yids.
So if, in today's game, you fancy joining in with what you think is a bit of harmless chanting, think again.
Think again.
Think again.
Karl Marx.
In the quest to uncover information about the Nazi propaganda film, all roads eventually lead to Utrecht and Dutch historian Karl Marx.
Okay, good morning, good morning. I'm Oded Breda.
Nice to meet you.
Or Breda, as you say.
Breda.
For 3 years, he studied the Nazi propaganda film, collecting, analyzing, and publishing all the existing source materials.
There's all kinds of documents here. That's, I mean,
This, for instance, is a folder containing the original film papers of Kurt Gerron. I can show you. This is all kinds of papers. This, for instance, is a draft script of the film where they actually show what they're going to shoot outside and inside. And it just lists everything, all the different scenes that they were planning to film. This is the shooting list for the first day of shooting. And by coincidence, we've had on that day, they actually filmed the shot of the spectators going into the barracks for the football game.
Wenn der Arbeitstag endet und der Feierabend beginnt, strömen aus den verschiedenen
It says, filmed from the city park to the marketplace, shot number 36. Publikum geht zum Fußballspiel, which says the spectators going to the football match.
Gestaltung der Freizeit ist von jedem Einzelnen überlassen.
If you ask that question for me as a historian, looking at it objectively, the surprising thing is how long the football sequence is in the whole film. It makes football in Theresienstadt look more important than it was, which I think is again a part of the propaganda idea behind it. Because the SS realized that football is something that not just the people in the ghetto, but people all over the world liked, they thought if we put a lot of football in the film, it will make the acceptance of the film easier for people. Aren't you afraid that if you show an exciting football match, that the reaction will just be the opposite way, that people will say it cannot have been that bad if they were just playing football and enjoying themselves? Aren't you running a risk there?
I'm very afraid. We call it the summer camp effect.
Yeah.
The people think it's a summer camp, but look, it's not just about the football, because the whole film.
The whole film is about summer camp, where people are sitting together, enjoying their life, hearing music, seeing theater, children operas, etc., etc. All the people that you see in the movie, almost all of them, were dead between 4 to 6 weeks after this film.
I don't know whether you know this, but there was another film made earlier in the war, in 1942, also in Theresienstadt.
Yes, I know about it, but I never
by
saw it.
Irina Dodalova, also a Jewish inmate. And there's football on there as well.
Really?
And this is in 1942, in the late autumn of 1942, which was the worst period of the ghetto.
Yes.
This was the time when most people died, when the misery was at its highest. And at that very moment, they decided to make a movie. And at that very moment, you see it's winter, it's very cold. They are playing on the embankments around the fortress. They're playing football. You actually see the crematorium in the shot later on. And the film crew comes running, walking past. Look, they're walking past, and then the shot is pointed the other way, and then you see the crematorium in the background. Yeah, it's the crematorium.
Yes, now I know where it is. Wow.
In 1942, there was not enough room in the graveyard for the dead, so the Nazis built the crematorium to burn bodies. In September 1942, 58,491 people were crowded into the ghetto. 18,638 arrived on 38 transports. 13,004 were sent to the east. 3,941 people died that month, with 156 perishing in one day.
All the bodies were actually at the beginning were kept in boxes. More than 30,000 boxes in Terezin with the names of the dying people written on them. But at the end of the ghetto days, the Nazis decided they are going to destroy every evidence they could about the ghetto, so they ordered the Jews to move all the boxes to the river which is next to Terezin,
So all the ashes are actually were thrown to the river.
Yad Vashem is the front line of a modern-day endeavor to find a place for the Holocaust in the minds of a young generation. Israeli and German youth players break away from their annual winter tournament to face the atrocities of the past. The football game in Terezin plays an important role.
היו קבוצות בשמות של מקומות שהם באו, כמו ספרטה פראג, כמו אוסטריה וינה, כמו פורטונה קלן, והיו קבוצות שנקראו על שם שמות של מקומות בחוץ לארץ, כמו ארסנל, הייתה שם קבוצה כזאת. אבל מה שחשוב להבין שכל זה נפסק באוקטובר 1944, ולמעשה באותו זמן הליגה הסתיימה, וכל מה שקרה בגטו טרזין הפך להיות כמובן סיוט אחד גדול.
Delegations from the two countries most intertwined in the Holocaust come together to exorcise demons from the past.
Nationalspieler oder eine deutsche Nationalspielerin darf nicht vergessen, was vor 60 Jahren vor eurer Geburt in Deutschland geschehen ist. Ihr habt es eben zum Teil verfolgen können. Menschen wurden gedemütigt, ihnen wurde ihre Würde genommen. Sie wurden umgebracht, sie wurden gefoltert, sie wurden ermordet. Ihr habt das Ende gesehen und das Bild vor Augen, wie Menschen jüdischen Glaubens ihr eigenes Grab schaufeln mussten, sich ausziehen mussten, erschossen wurden und in diese Gräber fielen.
אחד הרגעים הקשים ביותר שעברתי בחיים זה לראות את אבא שלי, זיכרונו לברכה, היחידי שהצליח לשרוד את השואה, ביום שנקבע בצורה אקראית. עטוף בתפילין ובכי חרישי. כולם, 7 אנשים, נלקחו ונשרפו בדם. תקופה חלפה, אנחנו בתקופה אחרת לגמרי. עצם העובדה שאנחנו כאן ביחד, לובשים טרנינגים המייצגים שתי מדינות. זה דבר שצריך להוביל אותנו למקום שלעולם לא יקרה מה שקרה.
I got married, yes. When my son was about 10 or 12, my girl was 8. With my wife, she survived also. We tried to tell them about our faith, yes. They didn't want to listen. They did not want to listen. I think that they were ashamed or something like that. The grandchildren, they reacted positive. They wanted to know, and they asked me. But the children, during the communist system, they did not.
The soldiers, they are away, but I stay here and I can go around here. But these people who kept me, they live in me anymore. And therefore I have this feeling that I'm a free person. I can go out. When I was in the camp, I looked at the bird. I saw they was flying out, flying in, and I feel it must be wonderful. And today I can go up there.
I don't have any other questions about Pavel. It's not that important anymore because most of the people actually perished in Auschwitz. Most of them. But I guess that this quest actually gave me another quest, which is the whole thing, the whole Theresienstadt thing and the football.
זה בשבילו.